and welcome to the first episode of HYMOM, where our goal is helping youth with mind over matter. My name is Maisha, the creator of HYMOM, and I created the podcast because I wanted to bring awareness to the child suicide rate in the state of Georgia, particularly the Atlanta and surrounding areas. Last year alone, suicide was the second leading cause of death amongst children ages 10 through 14 in the state of Georgia. If suicide has touched your home, you're not alone. HYMOM is a safe, unscripted space where children and parents can talk honestly about surviving some of their hardest moments together. These are real voices, real families, real experiences, real conversations, moderated by licensed professionals. Our first two guests are two healthcare professionals in the Atlanta, Georgia, and surrounding areas. We have Dr. Russell, who is a dedicated mental health professional with over 20 years of experience in education and counseling. He's also the founder and director of Beginning a New Counseling and Consulting in Douglasville, Georgia. Alicia Brown is a licensed parent-peer specialist at the Pathways Center in Noonan, Georgia. As a parent-peer specialist, she provides support to families with children experiencing mental health challenges, using her own lived experience of parenting a child with similar needs. The premise of this podcast is grounded in empathy and guided by hope, where real families share their stories. Because when one family speaks, another one finally feels understood. Welcome to HYMOM.
Welcome to HYMOM, a podcast dedicated to young people who are struggling with suicidal thoughts and the families who love them. A little bit about us is we're going to talk about suicidal ideations, youth, and the things that they struggle with and how as families we can help them through. And we have our guest, Dr. Russell here. How are you?
I am doing well. How are you?
That's good. I'm doing well. My name is Alicia, and I'm a parent-peer specialist at Pathways. And you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I am Dr. Shina Russell. I'm a licensed professional counselor in the state of Georgia with Beginning a New Counseling and Consultant located in Douglasville, Georgia.
Awesome. Now, let's start with you, the youngest person who might be hurting right now. Maybe you feel overwhelmed, frustrated, tired of just the everyday life, school. It can be a lot, and we're going to try to help you to piece it together, to process the information so it doesn't feel like it's so much at one time, Maybe there's times where you've been like hurting and you didn't know how to say that you needed help, and you think that if you say something like you might be the only one battling this. You're not the only one. There are a lot of children who battle silently, but now we want to put a voice to this silence and give you guys the opportunity to talk about the things that you feel and how you can overcome some of this. What is youth suicide?
Well, when I think about when we talk about suicide, we have like the actual ideations where people are having thoughts. Mm-hmm. And then we also have where if there's attempts to complete. So if we're thinking about the ideations, they're, like I said, having thoughts about not wanting to be here. Yes. Also feeling hopeless and that they're just stuck in a place where they feel like there's no other way than to
be done.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And it's sad because they only see just a snippet of the world, but to them it's so big, you know what I mean?
Right.
And it's hard for them to really see their way out of the box,
right.
So our job is to put that silver lining inside that box so that they can begin to focus on the light, and the good things that they have and what's left here for them, and the things that they can explore. Do you know ways that we can recognize suicidal ideations?
The first thing I would say is the number one sign when I think about ideations, then people start to isolate themselves. Mm-hmm. So no longer interested in activities that they love to do. And all of a sudden, I don't want to go to soccer practice. I don't want to go to cheerleading. Yes. I just want to be alone in my room, and they're having those thoughts. So as parents noticing when kids are going through those things, you notice they're not out hanging with their friends.
Right.
That will be a first
telltale
sign that I
sign.
would say to look for.
Yes, yes. Because sometimes when it comes to even them talking about different like deaths or talking about dying or death and stuff a lot, and you're just like, okay, this is not normal conversation. Sometimes they talk a lot about there's no more future talk. It's like right now, this is what we're doing, or, can we give this away? Can I give my favorite toy away? And you're like, you love this toy. Why would you want to give that away? Or they start talking in past tense too, but if you don't know to look for it or listen for it, you kind of miss it sometimes, and sometimes kids, like parents, when it comes to like withdrawing, we don't recognize that they're withdrawing. Sometimes we're like, oh, they're just changing, they're going through something different, and you don't realize that is a sign. I know when I was going through with my son, I didn't realize the withdrawing was a sign at that time. I was just like, oh, okay, he's, doing his own little thing, and they're starting to grow and trying to figure out who they are. So how would you put that together? You know what I mean?
Right.
But it is definitely something to look at, and don't ignore it.
Yeah.
Don't ignore it.
Yeah. And something I would say too, that I think is very important to note, paying attention to the interaction that your kids are having, whether it's through their social media, like check up and see what things are they researching online.
Absolutely.
Who are they listening to? Because
Yes.
those things can really impact the thoughts that they're having.
That is true. I know, like when my kids are listening to music, the first beat catches you and you're like, oh, that's a good beat. I like that. And you're not really paying attention to the words. And then all of a sudden you find yourself catch a little snippet and you're like, wait, what was that? Can you rewind that real quick? What are you listening to? And then you realize that some of their music can be a little gloomy,
Yeah.
And then that's when you're really like, hey, you all right? What's going on? You want to talk about something? My kids mostly look at me crazy like, Mom, I'm good. I'm like, are you sure? Because that song is a little deep, nothing I would think you'd be, listening to.
And something I would say as well, that this probably happens more frequently than people recognize, like children having those thoughts, because
Yes.
again, they only know what they know, right?
Right.
And so they feel like that's the only outlet, and they are not thinking about what are other ways that I can address whatever the deeper concern, because we know
Yes.
that it's a deeper rooted cause when someone is having those thoughts. So even understanding or letting them know, I know sometimes people are thrown off guard when they have to deal with these situations.
Yes.
But understanding that it's not a thing that we want to look for,
Right.
but it is a little more common than not.
Yes.
So what do we do when we have those unhealthy thoughts? How do we seek the help and support? And I think those are important things
Absolutely.
to think about.
Right. So like some of the things that you could do when you have those unhealthy thoughts is don't stay in those thoughts long, because we're all going to have those negative thoughts that kind of drag us down, or like, when you're not having a good day. But if you stay in them too long, they begin to like overlap, like a domino effect. I tell people a lot, like it's like when you go to the beach and how they talk about the undertow, and where the waves are going, most people are like, let me go into the calm, and they're standing there in that calm, in that calm water. And that's the time when those negative thoughts start hitting you, and you're sitting there and you don't realize that the water's rising, and you're still just in that negative headspace. And before you know it, that undertow comes and pulls you out to sea. And now now you're in despair. You don't see anything, So my thing would be, don't sit in it too long. If you notice that you're sitting in it too long, then reach out to family members and friends that can give you a good laugh, or can get you out of that negative headspace. Talk about some of the things that you are great at. Yeah, you might not have a lot of friends, and that's okay. And you don't want a whole lot, because it causes confusion. You know what I mean? And you're only lucky to have really one good friend in life,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
And if kids knew that, they wouldn't try so hard to fit in,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
I'm like, you weren't meant to fit in. You were meant to stand out, you
Right.
know? So definitely try not to just sit there too long.
Right.
You know,
right.
think of the positive things.
Yeah. And for some, that's hard to do.
Yes.
And I'm thinking about from a therapist
Yes.
standpoint when we say, well, just don't be in that place. For
Mhm.
some people, that's really a challenge. And that's
Mhm.
when they need the additional support and the tools to help them navigate that space.
Yes.
So, again, what do you do? And something we call like behavior activation. Yeah, I find something else to do. Like if I'm feeling down, let me go watch a movie that's going to make me laugh, or let me go hang. But sometimes they get to a place where they're not even able to do that. And that's when I think it's important for family and parents to like recognize what's really happening so that you can support them in
Yes.
that. Like, I noticed you haven't been hanging with Samantha lately.
Right.
Like, what's happening? Where would you like to go, and let's do some things?
Right.
And I think that will encourage them not to get in that spot that you're talking about, where that undertaking
With
will
it.
take them
Yes.
out there.
Yes. And that is true, because when it comes to like with my children too, I often, if they're in their room too long, I'm always in there. Like, what are you doing? You know, like entering into their world, meeting them where they're at. So that is true. Because I have met children who can't think of anything positive about themselves anymore, who struggle with, you know, what do you have to live for? You know, and that when you get to that point, it's hard to pull them out. But if you keep picking at it little by little, chipping at it away, you know, like an iceberg, if you just chip at it away little by little, eventually they'll start to like see themselves a little bit more. You know what I mean? And want to come out of their rooms and stuff. But sometimes I feel they get comfortable, you know, and scared of what it looks like out of it because they don't know it. You know what I mean? So when they're in it, it's like, okay, I know this space, but coming out of it is scary because it is a new place. But I tell the children, like, would you want to paint in vain or paint in purpose? You know, and talk about like the healing process. Like right now, you're painting in vain. You know, you're here in it and don't see yourself out of it. And you're constant on this like down a rabbit hole. You know what I mean? So start to find things that interest you. You know, even like you said, the music you listen to, and things that what is worth living for. You know, somebody that you look up to. You know, who could you call? Like let's talk to some of our friends and family to kind of help us through this time. You know, it does definitely get hard, you know, trying to figure out what's what. But what is your experience? Do you have any personal experience as well, or any experience like with
Of
youth?
course, being a therapist, I have experience, and I was a school counselor for many years as
wow.
well. So,
Yes.
having kids who struggle with, like you said, just finding purpose. Life can be hard. I like to say life be life, and sometimes,
Yes.
and it's hard to
Seriously.
navigate that as an adult. So
It is.
imagine being a young person
Yes.
without the proper tools, and understanding that sometimes parents, they're busy, maybe they're working, and they have things going on, and the kids feel like they're alone. And
Yes.
the shame that comes along with, I should not be having these thoughts.
Right.
And understanding that, okay, yeah, those are not the most healthiest thoughts to have, but we want you to be open so that you can communicate how you're feeling, so we know how to support you
Yes.
and to get you the help that you need.
Yes, absolutely. That's the most important part, is trying to figure out where they're at so we can get them, you know, what they need to get to the next level, or what does that look like? Giving them ideas of the different things, like the treasures that they do have. And I'm telling them, like, there's things within you haven't even recognized yet. You know, I've already see you're quirky, you're funny, you know, you got a lot to offer. And they're like, okay. I was like, what are some of the things that you used to like to do? You know, and then we'll go back into those things. Like, oh, I used to draw. You used to draw? Oh, okay, I can draw, you know. And your mom says you're pretty funny, you know what I mean? And then they start remembering who they are. So it's almost like if you have a lighter, and the lighter only sparks, But if we just take the other lighter and then you put it to that lighter with the flame, you get the lighter with the flame and put it to the spark, it becomes a flame again, you know?
Right.
So it's just trying to find them in the midst of their dark to rekindle or respark that flame, of who they are or what happened where did it go dark? You know what I mean? Which a lot of families, we're so used to, we don't talk about that. You know what I mean? What stays in this house, what happens in this house stays in this house, and kids learn to mask a lot because as adults, we mask a lot.
Right.
You know?
And they model what they see.
Yes. Like a lot of times when we're asking our kids, oh, how was your day? They're like, oh, good. Oh, okay. What'd you do? Oh, nothing, school. Like we're slow. And I'm like, right. Okay, so what did you do? Anybody make you smile? Anybody make you mad? And they really don't have a lot of dialect. And then I started to reflect on myself. When my kids asked me, how was my day? Oh, it was good. It wasn't so bad. You know what I mean? I never elaborate. You know what I mean? And maybe because I'm thinking, oh, they wouldn't understand, but opening up that dialect, like now when they ask me, oh man, I had a rough day. I was tired, the kids were at me today or whatever the case may be, like how my teacher was stressing me out. Okay, well, what happened? You know what I mean? But before it used to be really just one-liners.
Right.
And I didn't recognize it to be one-liners until after the fact,
Right.
I'm like, dang, well, that's why my kids, kind of real quick, answers and nothing elaborate. We ain't gonna go out there on that line. Right. We'll talk to my friends.
Yeah. True.
And
I think it's also important for us to normalize when things aren't going well too, because sometimes we put on these, like you said, the mask, and we got to show up in this world and as perfect people, and we know that we're not perfect. So understanding, like we talk about different emotions that people experience, and these are normal. But what do you do when you're experiencing that sadness or that loneliness? So understand that there may be a day that you're feeling lonely, and us modeling that for our kids, like, well, what do you do when you feel lonely, so that they can see and know how to navigate.
Yes, because we do show up, try to be perfect and clean cut for the world when really we are raw and uncut. We don't really have it all together as we portray, and we make mistakes even as parents, you know what I mean? And sometimes some of the things that we do might seem like, oh, she's mad at me, and we're not mad at you. It's just the situation. And maybe we just had a bad day, you know what I mean? And we're not taking it out on you. It just came across brass. And then the child internalizes it as if there's something wrong with them, and they take it as another hit. So I've learned to watch even like their body language, the way their eyes move, or if they're connecting with what I'm saying, or if my daughter was like, takes back like this, I'm like, oh, wait, no, that's not what I'm saying. Listen, let me regroup so you understand what I'm saying. I'm not mad. What I'm trying to say is I need you to clean your room, and get this together, whatever the case may be. And then she's like, oh, okay. I was like, yeah, I'm not mad at all. I'm just trying to get you to understand how important X, Y, Z is, without you feeling like I'm coming down. Because it's nothing like that. Trying to find out when the kids first started noticing their thoughts of suicidal ideation. Sometimes it's hard for them to even pinpoint, when it first started. Like they can probably pinpoint the first time, when they felt low. How do you help them to understand how to go back? You know what I mean?
When you say go back, what are you referring to pinpoint the first
what,
time?
Right, what causes
and when we
feelings.
think about the source, for some people it's hard to really even try to navigate that space because again, they can block things. So mentally have a block that I don't even want to go back to that place because it was painful for me to even experience that. So even working through, I think it's more that them even recognizing that this is where I am. And I don't necessarily know that it's
what
important to
started it.
pinpoint, but
Right.
okay, now that I recognize what this is, what should I do in this situation?
So it's kind of like putting words to it so that they can, once you put a word to it, then you can connect a feeling to it. Even if they can't tell you exactly. I just know last week this happened and it kind of triggered me from other things, but this right here, it bothers me. And I guess even learning to identify their triggers, which even as adults, that's hard because we kind of ignore our own, antennas, I should say, when they're going off, we kind of just like, okay, it's not too bad. We'll just keep it pushing,
Right.
but learning to identify your triggers and what makes you feel away.
Yeah, and that's important too, because again, if I can identify it, then I have the tool where I can recognize, okay, so if I'm feeling this way, I might need to do this to help me get through this time. So
Yes.
that's important for them to be able to
Very.
recognize where they are.
Yes.
And again, sometimes that can be challenging, and I think that's where the additional support can come in to teach
Absolutely.
them how to recognize those things.
Yes, because to them it's just like a feeling, but they don't know. I don't know. I can't say it's really just anger. Sometimes it's just a mixture of both.
Something that I use often is the feelings wheel, because when you can't really identify it, then that will give us a starting point, and then
Right.
we can explore that even further.
Okay.
So that you can put more meaning to it, because it may start off as sadness or anger,
Yes.
but deep down it can really be like despair or some deeper
Yes,
meaning
abandonment.
behind. Yes.
Yes, that is so true. I know, when one of the biggest things that our youth face is like bullying,
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to navigate that area. With my son, he was being bullied in school, and he didn't. As parents, we affirm our children. We tell them who they are, how amazing they are, and the shoulders that they stand on. You know what I mean? Everything. And then when they go out into this world, they just tear our little babies up, and then that leaves so much room for self-doubt, and with my son, we would talk to him. His name is Zion, but we would talk to him a lot about who he is and how amazing he is and the things that he does. And even just being him, he doesn't even have to say anything. He could command the room. You know what I mean? But when it comes to like these bullies, they can be relentless, and it's hard for children to express like, this person's bothering me without feeling like the tattletale. And I used to be the one to go up to the school and talk to the principal. Let me talk to these students, thinking that I was doing some good. But I think that me going to the students and saying like, hey, you can't treat people like this and whatnot, they kind of probably looked at me like I had 6 heads, like, who are you? You know what I mean? And
and some would actually say that if you went to talk to them.
Yes. And then not realizing I put more heat on him, after him going through the bullying and trying to affirm who he is, the isolation. I didn't notice a lot of the signs until afterwards, but it helped me to recognize it when I saw it come again. Because some things I've learned is like, when there are these tests, they come back again. And when it came back, I was like, oh, come on, God. We've done this already. What is this all about? Why do we have to, face this again? And I feel like I failed the first time, so I don't even know what to do. And then it was one of those things where it was like, you're like, Zion believed that I had to tell him these things, or his dad had to tell him these things because we are his parents. They tell me things because they love me. The world's going to tell me the truth is probably how he was viewing it. So when I was faced with it with his twin sisters who are 16 now, but in the time, it was like in the third, fourth grade, and I was like, wow, this is exactly around the time, like 10 years old, and I had to remind them of who I am to them. I tell you everything. If you're going to the doctor and you said, okay, am I going to get a shot? I'm not hiding it. Yes, you're going to get a shot. Is it going to hurt? Well, it depends on your pain threshold. You know, I said, I tell you, you're beautiful, not just because you're mine, but I see the beauty that you don't even see yet. You know, I see the way that you love on people, the way that you care for yourself and others. I see all of you, you know, so beauty is skin deep, you know, some people just look on the surface and you're deeper than that, you know, and if you weren't so bright, we can work on that too, you know, we don't have to stay there, you know, but me really reminding them of how much I love them and how much that I see them even when they don't think I'm looking, and just helping them to affirm themselves and speak over themselves, because sometimes I'm not going to be there, you know? So this time, instead of me being the mama bear and going to the school, well, I still went to the school, but instead of talking to the students, I was like, hey, listen, this is how we're going to do it. You guys have a zero tolerance for bullying? They're like, yes. I said, well, you're going to act as though you saw these things and you were just kind of back watching, you know what I mean? Therefore, now it gives the teacher back the power, you know, and it leaves the child from feeling so vulnerable or attacked by others because, oh, you had your mom come up here, you know what I mean? So let's leave it at the adult level and take accountability for the zero tolerance and making sure that these kids feel safe, you know, and this is my insight and you guys take it from there, you know, and when I did it that way, there was no pressure on them, you know, and they were able to kind of step back a little bit, face their fears, but not have to be in the midst of the fire where it's all burning, you know.
And something else as you talk about, even in the school setting and the teachers taking power, sometimes they're not even aware because these things can be so subtle. And even understanding what we equip the kids to stand up because they see stuff that others don't.
Right.
And even the adults, you could be right in the room and you don't know certain things that's happening.
So
is really happening. But how do you provide the support to those who are watching those things as bullying so they can take a stand and use their voice. And kids don't realize how powerful that is when they are standing up for others.
That is true.
And I think that's important for them to remember as well.
Yes, because not only are you feeling like that, like, again, you're not alone. There's other people who are feeling like that. They feel alone. So everybody's silent. But all it takes, like, that one flame that is like, we're not doing this. We're not talking about each other. We're here to learn and love on one another as much as we can. Tolerate us. We're here for a long time, you know, at school, you know, together. So we just got to learn how to get along, you know. You don't have to like me, but you're going to have to respect me, you know. And then that kind of puts the light back on the bully to where he kind of looks at himself or herself, you know. But that is true because the teachers are doing a lot. So they miss a lot, you know.
And thinking about the actual student who is the bully, that sometimes they're going through stuff within and they're just kind of projecting what they're feeling inside on someone else. So understanding that we have to support them and build them up because there's other ways to express how you're feeling without putting someone else down. So giving them the tools that they need to be successful in that area as well.
Absolutely. I think when it comes to the schools, they should have like more outlets or classes, or you know how like when the kids go to the counselors and stuff, just more sessions to where they're teaching kids how to empower themselves and how to empower others. They're like, we've learned to be so robotic. You know, you go to school, get the lesson. You know, after you do that, you start to get older. Now you go get a job. Now after that, you know what I mean? So it's like just so robotic. And if they would implement some of just how real life skills in school, you know, I think that children would thrive better because they are inquisitive and they have so much to offer, you know what I mean? And it opens up the doors to so many other windows of opportunity, you know, to just be comfortable in their own skin. Right. You know.
And the kids nowadays are exposed to so much information. So with technology and I mean, resources after
Yes.
resources and information after
Yes,
information,
yes.
really information overload.
That's right.
That
right,
they don't know
that
what to
part.
do with all this.
They
So,
don't. And that's a lot less than what we were ever exposed to, and even if you're blocking things, the kids are smart enough to get around those blockers. You know what I mean? So it's very important to have open conversations, open, honest conversations about how they're feeling and, just like, what does the world look like to you? Because they're overloaded and with emotions, with everything. And these things get big,
right. I read this article and it was talking about kids dealing with their emotions. And we're talking about the likes. Like this kid had a brand new outfit, ready to go to school. I'm going to look so great when I get there. Well, they don't use those terms nowadays, but that's what my terminology.
Right.
But then they go and they put the outfit on and they post it on Instagram because they tell me Facebook is for old people. So I'm going to say Insta or TikTok. And they don't get the likes.
Right.
And how they internalize the amount of likes they get for something that they were so confident in.
Yes. And that's what I mean by they were not meant to fit in. They were meant to stand out. So if you think it's great and you don't even post it. Just step out in that confidence, And the first person that says, oh, no, I like this. That's why I'm wearing it. This is for me,
But we have to get them to that place a lot because in this world, that matters to a lot of people.
And it does. And it's how do we turn that off? You know what I mean? Because sometimes, in this busy world with like school, sports, some kids have jobs, while they're still in high school or going to school and stuff like that. Like, how do we teach them that sometimes life get busy? You're not always going to be on the phone and, and then they might only just have seen you when you arrived. Like, oh, you didn't see my post? No, I didn't see your post, but you look good. Oh, thank you, but just, little compliments goes a long way, just small little, man, I like the way you put that together. You know what I mean? And then when they go out to their peers, I know they lose it quickly when somebody says something negative,
Well, when you think about, they say how many positive words you have to hear to counteract one negative word. And so just even imagining that.
Right.
So how can I get more positive things going? And
yes.
When sometimes the negative, if we focus on that, it seems bigger.
Yes.
And so when we're thinking about the kids and the suicidal ideations, if we're focusing on that thing that makes us down, even if we can't identify what it is, but we're focusing on I'm not feeling well or I'm feeling down, then that seems to be the big elephant in the room, so to speak.
Yes, and it's hard to even address it sometimes, And that is so true. It is the big elephant in the room. And how do you even get around that? I just want people to know that life, it does get hard. Life is going to happen regardless. It doesn't matter how good you are. If somebody's so bad, I used to say, that good things happen to good people and bad things happen to bad people. This is when I was young and naive, and I just figured that would sum it all up for my kids. You know what I mean? Until life really hit us. And then I really had to tell them that, life happens regardless. Just start to learn how to start to remember who you are. What your parents are telling you are not just because they love you. That's because these are truths, and sometimes parents have to give you the hard truths of things that you don't like to hear, but it's really only to make you better,
right.
And it can be a struggle at times, but you will overcome it. Your life does matter. There's nothing in this world that should allow you to close your curtain early. Like, you are the star of your show. There's no other Dr. Russell. There's no other Alicia. There's no other Michael. You have to learn to be comfortable in your own skin in a world that's going to try to tell you different.
And I would also say, because it's good that we have parents that encourage and love, but sometimes it's not always the story.
Right.
So when we think about some kids who may not have the love and
Yes.
support at home, and it's a real struggle for them. And so,
Yes.
how do we even support those kids?
Yes.
Because that can be the root cause of
That's
why
so
they're
true.
feeling that way. So, even understanding how do we empower the youth when they don't have that? Because
Yes.
understanding that they do have the strength within,
Right.
and that they can get through it even when it looks dark in their immediate environments.
That is true. I think with even it being dark in their immediate environments, I always tell them to look for those who pour into you. It
Mhm.
might not be your mom. It might not be your dad. It might be the neighbor from down the street that always takes interest in your anime show that nobody else takes interest in.
Mhm.
You know, it might be one of the, school counselors or just somebody. There's almost always, if you look close at your surroundings, there's almost always somebody that pours into you.
Mhm.
And those
Mhm.
be the ones that you want to hold on to, the
Mhm.
people that fill your cup,
Mhm. Mhm.
and surround yourself by just those people, you know, and enough so that when your cup is full, and people come around to poke holes in your cup, it'll still kind of sustain itself
Mhm.
because you
Mhm.
still have all that support
Mhm.
from the neighbor down the street and
Right.
everything, because it's hard to look outside of your world when it's so dark,
Right.
you
Right.
know. And I remember a time when my world was so dark as well,
Mhm.
and just trying to find something to
Mhm.
hold on
Mhm.
to,
Mhm.
But that's why I said if it wasn't for just the certain people that would pour into you,
Mhm.
then where would I be?
Right.
And the
Right.
same thing with the babies. Like find those people, that grandma, that auntie, sometimes you don't have any family, that friend, that
Mhm.
is always right there,
Mhm. Mhm.
pouring into you. Even if that's all you have, pour into each other,
Right. Right.
and then eventually that will, what is the word? Outshine,
Mhm.
it'll outshine, and then more people will start to see that positivity, and positivity attracts a lot of positivity,
Mhm.
and then
Mhm.
you, before you know it, you have a lot more people seeing your light,
Mhm.
where it used to be dim and gray,
Mhm. Mhm. Understood.
but
Yeah.
it's a lot.
Yes, definitely can
It
be.
is a lot when kids are coming to us with with suicidal ideations. A lot of parents don't know how to handle it.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
don't know what to say or what to do. And like you said earlier, sometimes it's just your mere presence.
Mhm.
Um, but always try to remain calm. you know, and reminding them of that you love them regardless. And don't be ashamed about, these thoughts and these feelings, because we all have had them. Truth is, at one point or another, we've all had these feelings and
Mhm.
these thoughts and
Mhm.
didn't know what to do with them. Um, but know that you're not by yourself. And you don't want to take it on as if you did something wrong to the child, because you might not have, you know what I
Right.
mean. And if you did, like I said earlier, as parents we make mistakes too, but validate their feelings,
Mhm.
let them know that that's tough,
Mhm. Mhm.
times where I've had struggles, and
Mhm.
how I overcame them, like we are talking about earlier, you know and ask them directly. A lot of parents want to hint around, no, do you feel like hurting yourself?
Right.
Do you feel like you don't want to be here anymore? You know?
And that's important too, to be direct when you're asking questions. Because sometimes people, oh, if I say it, they're gonna really be thinking about it. No,
Yes.
we need to know what's
Yes.
happening with you. And I know sometimes parents can feel blindsided, or they don't really understand where this could be coming from. You have the
Mhm.
perfect life, and
Yes.
like it could be a direct reflection on
Of
them,
them.
and that's not necessarily the case.
No.
So making sure that you support your child when they are going through those things, and like you said, asking those direct questions is
Yes.
not going to make things worse. It's actually going to give you the information you need so that you
Yes.
can get the support for them.
So true, so true. I tell my kids often that I can't make a decision on what to do or how to do if I don't have all the information, right, wrong, or indifferent. Just tell me, because there might be things that you looked at really big or really wrong when really they were really small. But if I didn't know that's how you looked at it, then I wouldn't know how to correct it and correct how you were thinking about it. Like, no, that's definitely not it. You know what I mean?
And sometimes the kids can experience their feelings being minimized. So
Yes.
it's like you shouldn't be thinking that's just drama and you're just going through the
Yes.
motions.
Yes.
But they are really
These are
telling
real
you how to,
feelings.
yes. And it's important for us to not to downplay it, even
No.
if we don't understand or we
Yes.
don't agree with what they're saying, just making sure that we say, hey, I'm here. I know
Yes.
this could be hard. I might not understand, but we're going to get you the support that
That's
you need
it.
to help you work through that.
Yes, absolutely. Because sometimes when it comes to the downplaying, I've heard a lot of children, like a lot of parents are like, I go to work, I do this, I do that. And yes, you are working hard to provide them the life that you want them to have. You know what I mean? But it's it's deeper than just that. I tell parents it's more emotional support than just the physical. Like, yeah, I got a nice room, I got this XYZ, and a lot of times we're giving them these things because we're missing. We're always working, so we're missing in time. So we're trying to give them things that'll pacify the times that we're not there, not realizing that that's not you, that's not mom, that's not dad, that we really have to start getting back to where families sit around the table again, to where we have real conversations about where their minds are at.
Right. And that brings me to the thought about when we're around the table and mental health comes up. For some cultures, that's not a normal thing. Like, it's like, oh, you could go pray about it, or we don't talk about how we feel. That's like dishonoring. And at the end of the day, this is a real struggle for people. So respecting the cultural differences, but also understanding how to support a child when I wasn't raised that way. Like, I don't understand, like, what are you talking about here? But giving them what they need.
Yes, and just understanding that your story is not their story.
Right.
And how you went through your life is not how they're going through their life or viewing their life. This is something that's big and it's real and they can feel it. It's heavy on them. And I often tell parents, there's times where your parents neglected some of your needs. And so now you're used to that narrative and you're neglecting their needs unknowingly, passing on that same tradition. But if you would learn to, I tell the parents a lot, like, to go to therapy yourself, and heal that inner child yourself. And in going to therapy, then you'll be able to reach your child. You know what I mean? And they're like, I never thought about it like that. If I might need some help, but you can coexist in that, and then that way, when they're having those conversations about how they're really feeling, you're in touch with how you really feel. Then you're like, okay, that is real.
Right.
I do remember when I had these feelings, and just letting them know that you hear them, and that you're not just trying to shut them up, or just scoop it underneath the rug, so to speak.
Right. So that we don't continue to pass down that, what I call generational trauma, when we don't even know and we're not even aware that these things have that impact.
Yes.
So understanding what that looks like. And like you said, if you do the work within yourself, you're going to be able to recognize this, and then you can help navigate that space with your kids as well.
Yes. It is very important. That way that we can stop this suicide, that's going on with our youth. It's so sad. How many times you turn on the radio or the TV and this is what you're hearing. You know what I mean? And
And I was thinking about sometimes some myths that we have around that, like things have to be out of order. Like things have to be going terribly
So
wrong
wrong.
for someone to have those things. I'm just thinking about something I saw on the news not too long ago, where a kid completed suicide and the parents was asking questions.
Yeah.
And it's a whole thing, so I'm not going to talk about it now because I think they got like a lawsuit or something going
Oh
on right now
goodness, yes.
behind it. But how the parents wanted to, they had no idea, and
Right.
they 2-parent home,
Mhm.
not the ideal thing,
Right.
and everything seemed okay. And
Until it
it
wasn't.
wasn't, yes.
Until it wasn't. And that's the hard part, because it catches you so off guard. Like you could be aware of the little things, but to you, you don't think that it's that much to amount to them not wanting to be here, and it is such a dark space, and they don't you don't always catch it. You don't always catch it, but when you do catch wind, pay attention and really take them back to where you used to hold them in their lap. Like, even with my kids, I put them on my lap and start messing with them and stuff. They're like, "Mom, too big for this. You're never too big for this." Let's talk about some things. Let's revert back to where you had no cares.
Right. Right.
And just lying in that safety
Yeah.
of a mind frame for the moment.
And then when you say going back to a space where it's kind of hard to go back to when they don't have any cares and now they do, right?
Right.
So how do we navigate that too? Because that's
true.
not going to go away. We can't like push it back and say, well, don't worry about what happened at school today, because we tell them that, don't worry.
But
in
on
their
the
mind, this is a big thing, and I have
Yes.
to show up every day and try to deal with this situation.
Yes.
So again,
How do they
supporting
deal with the embarrassment and stuff? That is true. How do you help them in the midst of facing the world again? And that's how you do it is telling them about times where you've been through some things, and where you had to go and face the world. And yes, was my armpits itchy and my palms were sweaty? Yes, they were.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes.
Did my heart skip beats? It probably did. I don't even know if it was beating at one moment because I was holding my breath so tight. You know what I mean? But it's learning that you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to learn from them, and you're going to grow from them. And sometimes growing hurts, and that's okay. You know what I mean? And those who stick by you through the thick of this fire, those are the ones that you continue to hold close. Those that shy away from you after this, those are the ones that were never really there for you or couldn't be there for you past this point of your growth. You know what I mean? So I guess just reminding them of times where you've struggled, and how you overcame it. And I may be old school, but I do know some things, you know what I mean? And they tend to oftentimes come back like, "Ma, you were right." I went there and I, held my head up, you know what I mean? And sometimes it got to me a little bit, but I kept going, like you said, and you'll get through the thick of it,
And understanding that every day is not going to be a bed of roses. There's going to be challenges that you're going to have to face, and how are you going to face those challenges? So it's not if, it's when.
That's right.
What do we do, and how do you prepare for that, knowing that as long as you continue to wake up and you see another day, you have an opportunity to correct those things. So understanding that should not be an option for you, because again, if I wake up, I got another day to get this thing under control. So.
That's it. And take it a day at a time. It's always going to feel overwhelming when like when you got a big plate of food, and the old folks used to say my ass was bigger than my stomach. You know what I mean? You got to just take it a little bit at a time, a day at a time, a moment at a time, and eat away at that little bit, take care of that little bit. And then eventually you'll see that the plate that was so huge, you'll only have a few scraps on there. You know what I mean? Because when you look at it, at things as a whole, it is overwhelming, but you and we will get through this. It is definitely something that we need to talk about, something that we need to help parents get familiar with how to talk about it. And children, don't be afraid to say how it is you feel. And parents got to learn not to be so judgmental,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
because when the child feels judged when they're bringing up whatever it is that you told them, like, just tell me, we could talk about it. And the moment the child talks about it, the parent is like, well, you shouldn't feel like that. This is this. And I'm like, you just told them to talk about it. They're opening up this window of opportunity, and this is your time to be able to reach them.
Right.
You
They're
know?
learning how to cope at that moment. Like,
Yes.
okay, if I brought this to you,
Yes.
and
How are you going to deal with it?
yeah, and I felt rejected, so to
Yes.
speak,
They're
then
gonna
I'm
shut
not going to
back
come to
down.
you with anything else
That's
if this is the
right.
case. So understanding
Yes.
that sometimes as parents, you have to take a deep breath
Yes.
and say, okay, this is new for me,
Right.
but we're going to work through it, right?
Yes. It's just a moment.
So I would just say some things to close us out.
Yes.
When to seek professional help. So if you are experiencing persistent hopelessness, if they have active plans, or if you are recognizing significant behavior changes, any self-harm or previous attempts, those are definitely things that you need to be aware of, that you need to seek additional support for.
Absolutely. And if you or someone you love is in a crisis, please reach out. And out in our area in the United States, you can call or text 988, and that's the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. You can also talk to a school counselor, a doctor, or a trusted adult. And if you're not in crisis but want to learn more, check out organizations like the Trevor Project, and that's for the LGBTQ and youth. There's another one called the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and Crisis Text, which is text home to 741-741. Those are also organizations that you can reach out to learn more about suicide and suicide prevention. But I want to leave you with this. Just know that you're enough. You're more than enough. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. There is no lack in you. And I want you guys to know that your life matters and that this is only a moment. You know, you have your whole life ahead of you. And I know that right now it feels like things are bleak or dark. And if you reach out, we are able to help pull you through. And then in turn, you'll learn how to pull somebody else through, but your life matters. Don't close the curtain on a temporary situation permanently. And everything, I promise, everything works out. It does. It does. I can attest to that. I didn't see my way out at times. And then now looking back, I'm like, wow, imagine if I would have closed the curtain a long time ago, what the world would have missed out on, and you guys have a lot to offer the world. So keep shining, be that spark. And if you are a flame, help somebody light them up, and encourage each other. Look out for one another. This world is a big world and you're not alone in it. And we are all here to help you and reach out to try to pull you through, and we'll pull you through.
Yes.
But thank you so much. This is our HYMOM, helping youth with mind over matter, and we'll help you with like different coping skills and ways to deal with those big emotions and help you identifying your triggers and ways that you can come up out of it when you're in the thick of it.
Thank you.
And thank you. This is our guest, Dr. Russell. Thank you so much. You were very enlightening. And thank you for all that you do for the youth who also need somebody to talk to. And thank you for being that listening ear. I do appreciate you. And thank you for coming in as a guest.
Yes, thank you for having me. And it was a
welcome.
pleasure to have this conversation.
Yes, absolutely. There'll be more to come for sure.
This concludes the first episode of HYMOM. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned. There's more to come.